Well, thank you very much for all attending today here. We're in the LOB and we're having a committee conference referencing HB 242. It's an act relative to the content of an adequate education. And to start with, perhaps what we ought to do, as Senator Ward did with us the other day, introduce ourselves going around the table so our public that's out there listening remotely might know who's at the table. Why don't you go ahead first,
Okay.
Representative Hobson.
Representative Deb Hobson. I'm from Rockingham 35 down on the seacoast.
Representative Glenn Cordelli, representing Tufton Borough, Moulton Borough, and Sandwich in the beautiful Lakes region.
Senator Ward,
Senator Ward, District 8.
that's from Stoddard, right?
That started up. And
Okay, thank you very much. Representative Hennessy.
Oh, thank you, Representative. Senator Erin Hennessy from District 1, which is Northern Grafton, all of Coas, the glorious North Country of our state.
Thank you. Representative Prentice.
Sure, Sue Prentice, District 5, so the southern part of Grafton County and two towns in Sullivan County, Claremont and.
Thank you very much. And I'm Rick Ladd. I am a representative. I chair House Education. I am also from Grafton County, and I hail from Haverhill, New Hampshire. And so thank you very much from the beautiful North Country.
I lived in
Grafton.
Haverhill, North Haverhill, loved it,
North Haverhill is a wonderful little community.
yeah, lived there.
Grafton is well represented today.
That's right.
It's good. It's a
Care
good
about
place to
education.
visit. Well, thank you very much, folks. Let me start out and then we can get into some discussion on this. There are very few places in this particular legislation where there's much difference at all from the two versions. So we should be able to handle this quickly. But what we have noticed is that there, and one of the primary reasons why the House has said we'd like to sit down and discuss this is that there's also a reference to criteria for an adequate education in SB 148. And where we're modifying places where we're dealing with criteria for an adequate education here, we ought to try and get ourselves on the same page on both those bills so we don't have one bill saying one thing, another bill saying another. So that's the rationale for, I believe, for us coming forward and saying we need to have a committee conference. So let's address the first thing where the one difference. Is there any problem with House members here in terms of what the Senate did on page 4? Schools shall accept credits required for high school graduation consistent with rules adopted by the State Board of Education pursuant to RSA 541A relative to the approval of alternative programs for granting credit leading to graduation. We don't have a problem with that. So the issue apparently, Senator Ward, does the Senate have any other issues other than what maybe we have with the criteria for an adequate education, which we should mesh with SB 148?
it is nice to have it built together so they don't, not saying different things.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So,
Okay, then, so if we can look at the latter part of this bill where we talk about the criteria for an adequate education. And let's see, find out where that is here. Maybe it's the front side.
Page 1 starts.
Yeah, page 1 starts. I don't believe, well, that's where we're in the criteria for an adequate education. On page 2 at the top, we're dealing with knowledge of biological, physical, and earth sciences to enable them to understand and appreciate the world. It's around them now. We've added in and the engineering, socioeconomic, and geopolitical challenges around them, the students. If we're looking at 148, which we just went through the other day, it reads as follows in 148. Knowledge of the biological, physical, and earth sciences, including environmental sciences, that investigate the complex interaction of physical, chemical, and biological processes that take place on the earth to enable them to understand and appreciate the world and the engineering, socioeconomic, and geopolitical challenges around them. So we added in from language, which is in 148. We should, I say, add that into this so that they're two reading similarly.
Do you have an amendment for
No, I was just going to take the amending language for these three areas, which we have right here, right from 148, and put those in if everybody agreed. The other part,
Are there copies of 148? There should be.
A copy for this side by side,
that's a side by side of 242 to 148.
just on this particular section.
Yeah, I have a copy. I don't know. I think those were handed out the other day when we were in, you weren't with us.
No, I wasn't. That's. So is there a way that we can combine these all into one document to look at versus piecemealing this together? Because I'm not going to sign off on anything, but I can't see it all in one place.
Well, it's all in this right here.
But it's not on the form,
It's not in the form of an amendment.
right?
No, it's not.
Respectfully,
Yeah, yeah.
Representative.
No, Rick's fine, so.
Wait,
So
it's all in what? Sorry, I don't see.
it's in the side by side, but we don't have an
Side by side.
Oh.
This one.
because I'm just being a little jumpy. I don't try to follow it.
Would you please, do? Jen will go run us a copy of side by side. for
Yeah.
everybody.
That's what Ray wants to do.
Right, this was a side-by-side comparing HB 242 and
I
148.
don't, I don't
Yeah.
have that.
Yeah, it's the one that, it was passed out yesterday
Mine was
or
on-
Monday. Was it Monday we met?
Yeah,
Okay,
Monday.
well, that's in
Time
a
flies.
different folder, right?
And I agree, mine's on the floor by my desk at the house.
Oh, just so you know, while we're waiting for that, I do want to talk about something that's in 242 that I had in discussions with Department of Education, I had a difficult time putting a number to it because it's a little bit unclear. So we can either address it now or we can address it next year. I'm gonna find it. I'm just looking. On page 6. An additional, and it's in the first paragraph under C. It says, an additional disparity achievement proficiency aid grant shall be provided to eligible school districts and schools and charter schools and to improve academic achievement and growth of level 1 and level 2 proficiency students. So in discussions with the Department of Education, they don't know what grade level that would be, or is it every grade level? And if it's every grade level, is it every test? So is it a student who achieves a
okay.
1 or a 2 in math, or I don't know every topic that they would achieve a 1 or a 2 in. So I think we just need to provide a lot more clarity on what this additional grant would be. So in attempting to include it in the funding this year, I was unable to include it in the funding, even though it doesn't have to be included yet.
Okay, let me try to explain. There's two areas that are not part of adequacy here.
Yeah, I
One,
got that.
The first part, it deals with the equalized valuation per pupil, which is the physical capacity disparity aid. And that was a scaled down ratcheted formula, depending upon where you go from the lowest, let's say, property valuation per pupil, maybe around $350,000. The highest might range up to $7 million per pupil, like a wealthy community like Molten Borough. Then from about $1.1 million down to the 350, there was a sliding scale, whereas the closer you got to 350, the more money you got per pupil for this disparity aid. That's a formula that's been driven from both the concept wise from the last study commission we had, the 2018 task force, which we had on studying school aid. The second part was a concern that if I am a community which has a tax base or a equalized property valuation is well above that $1.1 million, but I have these large groups of students within that have the needs for remediation. It could be a particular subgroup, as we oftentimes see in our proficiency testing. How do we help those students as well? The concept was that if you had a large percentage of those, like a 48% free and reduced or something such as that, there would be money available there. The concept was we'd look at Title I scores. That wasn't available. So what we opted to do with working with DOE at that moment was to look at the results of the achievements testing that was done in the schools. And 1 and 2 are those areas which are below proficiency. 3 and 4 are at proficiency or above proficiency. And so we take the number of students in the categories 1 and 2 and see what they are, so they may receive that additional support. I know it's not clear, and our testing starts at grade 3, so it does not include grades K through 2. That's not stated here. It may be something that at this point in time, we may not want to have that in this particular legislation. We can take that line out and address that through future legislation in the next round this year. Or we could leave it in and clarify it.
And maybe this isn't the time to do it. Maybe we should take it out. But just so you know, for the funding, and I know that this was not the date of the implementation of this, was not for this next biennium, but the fiscal disparity aid, we used a different formula. We used the free and reduced one because of
right.
there was some issues that I had found with the fiscal disparity aid, that it didn't necessarily go to the towns, to the school districts that actually needed it the most. Sometimes there was a lot of wealthy communities, perhaps in the Lakes region, that were receiving it, or down south that were receiving it, even though they had average household incomes well over $100,000, but they just had a lot of kids. And so they would receive fiscal disparity aid, where a community that had average household income less than $40,000, that seeing fewer and fewer kids come to the school, didn't actually receive fiscal disparity aid. So that's the problem I saw with that. So just that whole section C, although I really want to continue to address this issue, it wasn't included in the budget.
When we looked at this, we had another bill that came forward to us. What was the number? That 608?
608, yes.
HB 608. We had this formula in there. We just flat ran out of time and could not address the issue. I know the issue you're dealing with in your legislation, your amended language, which for a Haverhill, that'd be wonderful. And for many towns which are having these disparity issues, where, if you're at the 48% or higher or thereabouts, roughly around $600 per pupil, and then it ratchets down as you get down to 12%. We've had that formula built in. That was a formula which was similar to what we had in 2008, 2009, which came out of that original commission, which we had fiscal capacity disparity aid based upon that premise. 2018, chaired by Representative Umberger, we went to the equalized valuation per pupil. That's Glenn was on that, I was on that. And then we looked at that again with the study commission we had just recently in 2020. There's no question, we all believe that fiscal capacity disparity aid is separate from adequacy and needed. How we derive that is the issue, and I think that needs further discussion.
Yes, I definitely agree.
So what you might want to do, Aaron, on this is that where we say the cost of fiscal capacity disparity aid is a separate grant from adequacy, might stop it right there.
Okay.
And let the people on, the policy and finance come together, hopefully in some kind of a subgroup of maybe the finance and the policy committees, and work this out. It's a huge issue. I would hope we could address that in the second year of this biennium and get this behind us and get on with the world when this thing goes into effect.
Okay. So are you in favor then of deleting from and to the period at the end of that C there?
Yes. Yes.
So could you be specific, the cost of fiscal disparity
So
capacity?
it would, there, the sentence would be the cost of fiscal capacity disparity aid is a separate grant from adequacy, period.
Yeah,
Period.
yeah, leave it at that. Take out the rest of it.
Yeah. I believe we would be very much in support of that.
Mhm.
We're just anxious to see fiscal capacity disparity placed in this budget somewhere, somehow. It's going to help all the communities, both disparity and equity wise. Okay. Are there any other areas that we can get back to the criteria parts? And what we could do then, if we can resolve this, we could take a break and get this amendment quickly made. So the other portion, if I get back, did everybody get a copy of the sheet that Jen just brought down?
The 242 and 148.
242. If you look at on page 1, at the first change there where it says knowledge of the biological, physical, and earth sciences, etc., that is what we have discussed in SB 148. I would like to see that replaced on HB 242, that section, that criteria for an adequate education, that particular section. As the first thing we have to do. That would replace Roman 3. And the next change, which we have there on SB 148, criteria on the bottom of page 1. Currently, you can see what's in law, which is in not the highlighted or the bold. The change with sound wellness and environmental practices, including outdoor recreation, to enable them to enhance their own well-being as well as that of others. There's a driver for this, and outdoor recreation is one that the career technical education centers are trying to get into and have support through adequacy for what they are doing to prepare people for jobs in that tourism recreation industry, which is ballooning in our state. And the last area which would be changed would be the Roman 7, which is on the back side of that sheet that Jen just brought down to us, which was for changing Roman 7 of the criteria for an adequate education to incorporate what the Senate had proposed in 148, skills for lifelong learning, including interpersonal and technological skills to enable them to learn, work, communicate, and participate effectively in changing society and environment. We would like to propose that be changed slightly. Let's see, where's that sheet? To what was discussed the other day in 148. To read us as I have right here, if you're looking at Romans 7, it says skills for lifelong learning, including interpersonal. We'd like to add in there environmental education and technical skills, getting back to what you have there, to enable them to learn, work, communicate, and participate effectively in a changing society and environment. So what we're proposing is that we also add in the word environmental education following interpersonal. And that will line up with 148, which then has the following two paragraphs in 148, which deal with the Director of Career Technical Education, which came in from, that was the Senate version, and also incorporates Part 6 of the Senate version in 148. That will remain in 148, not in what we're doing today. So what we're doing is we're melding what the Senate has put forward and these small changes to incorporate the outdoor recreation and environmental issues that we need to be emphasizing in our adequate education. Let's open to comments.
No, no, no.
So what I should do then, Madam Chair, is to get an amendment made. We should take a break. Are we around for another hour here? We have another one starting up in another half hour. And then I know we also have 147 at 1 o'clock today. Pardon me?
148.
148. We did 147. Sorry, apologize. Too many numbers. Yeah. Yeah, I will sign on 147 too. So do we want to take a break and come back? Time where you can see that amending language as Senator Prentice has indicated.
If they can do it, I think that would be great. I have to look at it.
Yes, which I'll. So what's your schedule? Schedule's, I have a 10 o'clock and a 1 and. So 11 o'clock I can do. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's 11 o'clock.
Yeah, that would be great.
Madam Chair. 11. For what? Come back on this.
Come
one.
back here, take a break. Come back to 11.
9 to 10, and then we get 10 to 11. So you want to come back for the next one?
Well, if we can get this amendment made.
Yeah.
And we finish at 10:59:11, then we would just open this back up
Yeah. That's
and
fine.
approve that amendment and be done with 242. Thank you very much. So let's close this one down and we'll start the other one in 30 minutes, according to that clock.
Oh, there's a couple of them.
Did you get one?
Got one here.
And side, can you slide
Do you
one?
have two of them?
A
or
couple
one?
left.
Could I
Just
shoot
slide
one off?
Jen, do you have some more? She has more over there.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm
What
sorry.
do I need two for?
Yeah.
They're the same, right?
Should be.
Oh, we got
It
them.
should be, I hope.
One. I got three.
Each eye, huh?
All right.
Jen, you need one?
I'm all set. I got it.
Can I have mine?
Are we live now, Jen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. For the people out in the public listening to this community conference, this is HB 278, an act relative to the use of unused district facilities by charter public schools. What I'd like to do first is for everybody that's out there to know whom they're looking at, who they're looking at. Well, can we start with you, Representative Hill, and can you just introduce yourself, please?
Sure. I'm Representative Greg Hill. I represent the town of Northfield and 1/3 of the city of Franklin.
Representative Ralph Bohm, Hillsborough District 20, which is the town of Litchfield.
Glenn Cordelli, representing Tufton Borough, Moulton Borough, and Sandwich in the beautiful Lakes region.
Senator Ward?
I'm Ruth Ward, Senator from the 8th District.
Erin Hennessy, Senator from District 1, the 24% of the northern part of our state.
Representative Khan?
Yes, Senator Jay
Senator.
Kahn from Keene, representing 15 of 23 towns in Cheshire County.
Thank you very much. And I'm Rick Ladd. I'm representing Haverhill, New Hampshire, and I also chair House Education. So let's get into HB 278 here. We all have a side-by-side in front of us. It appears to me that everything beyond the first page is pretty much agreed upon by the Senate and the House version. So we're looking at the part one of this, which deals with unused facilities. And we're looking at the second part there, which deals with dates. 2021 versus 2022. So let's open this up first for a discussion regarding part one. Folks, anybody who would like to discuss this?
Sure. So I think it's important for everyone to keep in mind the fact that this list that would be maintained by the DOE is really nothing but a record keeper, gatekeeper type situation. It doesn't require any action to take place. It's merely a holding spot for the names of schools. And there is always it's also important to keep in mind that there is the opportunity for any school district to stay off that list by having a school board approved plan for using that building. I would like to say for academic purposes, and that may also be part of the discussion. But really, it still comes down to the fact that being on this list of quote unquote unused facilities doesn't obligate or trigger anything. It's merely a I don't know, a gatekeeper's list of what schools may be open to having a dialogue with a charter school that needs that space. I also think it's important that we lay on the table the idea that these schools are very expensive to build, and they are built for a purpose, and the purpose is generally thought of to be academic instruction. It doesn't seem to make sense to me to have two different types of public school students, one able to use these dedicated school buildings and another not able to. So I would like, or I would hope, we would be able to recognize that having students in these schools that were built for that purpose is the optimal decision-making process that we should be heading towards. And that's all I would like to put on the table.
I'd like to, go ahead,
Thank
Senator.
you. Thank you, Representative Hill. I just want to also just reconfirm something that you said, that if, say, a town has a very, what would be a very lucrative property if they were to sell it on the open market for, say, new housing or something of that nature, nothing in this legislation requires that they sell it to a school instead.
Correct.
So just to follow up on that a little bit, where Senator Hennessy's coming from. If I were to close down Woodsville Elementary School, which is right across from Walmart, and move the kids in the middle school down in North Haverhill, the Woodsville Elementary School could be put on the market, seeing the value of that property. Obviously, you rip down that school, your folks like to move by the Walmarts. That's where your retailers are going to go. So this bill has nothing to do with that situation.
It has something to do with
Yeah,
it
but-
because there's obviously an obligation in the purchase and sale agreement that Woodsville or the school board, when they list it, they would have the requirement to offer it to charter schools at the market price. So if you're CVS, or just to use it, if they wanted to be located where that building was, and the school board had entered in negotiation with CVS, the school board would be required to have in the document, in the purchase and sale agreement, okay, but we need to first alert or let the DOE know, who will then turn around and let the charter schools know that this property is available. And then they would look at it and say, well, in my belief, they would look at it and say, there's no way we can compete with the CVS market price. And therefore the deal would still continue on. They probably, in that situation, they wouldn't even contact and inquire. It would be my feeling. They would just say, well, if it's going to CVS, it's obviously out of our price range. So I don't think anything different changes in that regard.
Thank you.
I think we're in agreement with that.
Representative Ward, you have
Question. It seems to me that you're talking about putting it on the market. So if a school is put on the market, wouldn't you at the same time notify the DOE, and DOE could send out?
Yes.
So
that-
it is not the matter necessarily that CVS hears about it first and comes in and gives an offer. And then later on, by the way, you have to offer it to the schools. It seems to me that should be done at the same time.
I think what typically happens, well, and maybe it's your scenario, so maybe you can explain what you're dealing with. But it would seem to me that either through word of mouth or a local broker or somebody that is scouting properties for a new CVS, not to pick on CVS, but it could be anything. If you're putting in a Walmart across the street, I believe that there are brokers that look for properties wherever a Walmart is going. So whatever drives the bus first, I don't know. I mean, it would seem to me that there is someone looking for where a Walmart's going, and then they're looking for the properties nearby. So they would probably approach the school board and say, you know, you have this school here. We're happy to buy it for X number of dollars. And the school board would say, that's great. But in New Hampshire, we have this provision that requires us to, if we're going to sell it, we have to first offer it to charter schools. That's how I think.
Representative.
Yeah.
Representative.
Thank you. But also based on timing, it's possible in that scenario that the property would have been listed with the Department of Education because there was unused space. So it could well be that they were already on the list at the Department of Education.
And that's why the unused property list is important, I
Right.
think.
And how long would the chartered school, upon notice of sale, have to indicate that they had wished to make an offer?
It's in here.
I thought it was 2 months.
Sounds familiar.
I can't remember either. I know it came up in the Senate hearings last year. This bill, but, I don't know. Does anybody have the bill? that-
Yeah.
I do.
Oh,
I'm not seeing it.
60 days? Is it?
Where did you see it?
You need to look there, but
It's 60 days. If you're. if
Yep,
you're
60
undecided by
days
that,
on.
yeah.
In Part
Alright.
B,
B, yes.
Okay.
3, Roman 3,
Yep.
Part B. The last sentence says.
Yep.
Right of first refusal,
Yep.
60 days after the notification to the charter school administrator.
And then 6 months after that to conclude
To conclude.
the work, the lease or.
If their offer is accepted.
Yeah.
So, let me give you a couple of reasons that I think the Senate version is a better version because of the definition of what is unused. First off, it doesn't require, unused doesn't require any additional measurement. Unused is unused, and so I think that's just so clear. And if I come from a city that has 6 unused school buildings, which I do, and each one of those 6 has either a private school or a public school, or it's been turned into an apartment building. So, you know, back on the tax rolls, and amen, the city's proud of that. Because the redevelopment that took place. So local control and the ability to just do this without state statute, without a list needing to be maintained, without it needing to be publicized, you know, all over the state. It's just happened. And, you know, so there's a part of this local control. What do we need to do this for? And I think for 3 years, it's pretty much inhibited this legislation, which we've seen in some form or another over the last 3 years come forward and not be adopted. So I believe that the Senate adopted the version it did so that we, one, make it simple for the school districts to determine unused. Second, that we have an amendment that, you know, if there's, the Democrats could sign on to. And why is a bipartisan agreement on this important for me? Is because I think you want this to stick for a long time. And someday, I don't know, you name the year, I can't.
Where are you going?
Someday, you know, a different legislature is going to look at this and say, did any Democrats sign on to this? Did any vote for this? And if they find evidence that it's a one party slamming in kind of bill, it could be undone. And personally, having seen this come around 3 times already, I hope that doesn't happen. But if we're gonna put something onto school districts that they feel they don't need, that requires additional measurements and evaluations, and it could very easily be undone in the future, and that's the goal of the Senate. Passed version, in my opinion.
Okay, Senator Khan, I'm going to pass out.
So,
pardon
Yeah,
me?
you finish that sentence.
Yeah, right.
No, I'm not I'll wait and do that later in life. But at this is just sample language to bring into this discussion. The House had incorporated a line that said would, and also with less than 10% of the facility being used, that part. So this speaks to, yeah, a lot of these buildings are standing unused, but they're either used for storage or they're used for some purpose that, we could go through the litany of purposes, which is less than 10% of the square footage of the facility. So that's, I would consider that building underutilized. Is there room for this type of language that you're seeing right here to blend in with language which the Senate has put forward?
I think for me, the sticking point has been that the 10%, 10% of what? How do you measure them? Which buildings do you take a look at? And I think that when you say something like that, you have to tell exactly what you're measuring.
The square footage of the building.
Yeah, but sometimes they have more than one building. And people have asked if they have a separate gym or something like that, should you measure that one as well?
Oh, I see what you're saying. So,
Right.
so like, if you look at the elementary school in my district, they have like a kind of attached, detached structure. And like the high school I grew up going to had all these different pods in
Mhm.
different buildings that you would have to.
Portable
sunny-
classrooms?
Sunny South Florida,
Yeah,
but yeah, portable classrooms, and then even just different buildings on the campus. So maybe it can be defined better as campus or
Hmm.
I don't know how to define it, but
So, yeah,
Go ahead, Representative.
so in light of the unused definition that you had in the Senate side, how would that fit in with this scenario with multiple buildings? Does that mean if one of the buildings houses, I don't know, pick something, does that mean that the entire complex is then being used and therefore, which ruins the intent of the building, of the bill?
I agree.
So, and this is the dancing on the head of the pin problem that we're having here. The intent is to make sure, from my point of view, to make sure valuable space is being used for valuable children. That's all I want to get to. I want to make sure that we don't have that expensive and designed for children property underutilized.
Yeah, I think the underutilized is left out in the Senate side of the equation. And that my reading of the Senate side is that it's the entire facility has to be unused.
Well, it says unused facility means a school building.
Right. So,
So in the scenario that Senator Hennessy described, a school building among several school buildings on the same site would be a vacant school building. So,
There are a lot of questions.
sorry.
If you look at school building aid, we talk about a school building, a facility. I taking Senator Hennessy's example of maybe using portable classrooms with a, and that whole campus being a facility. I think there's some question in that, Stu, and I think you must agree that one of those portable classrooms could be used for storage of furniture. The rest of them are all empty. Because that portable classroom is now utilized, is the whole facility underutilized, or is it dancing on that pinhead?
Yeah,
Well, if you again look at Senate definition, it's an unused facility if it's not used for academic purposes, extracurricular activities, administrative, school functions, or sports.
I think it may be nice to use the building to store furniture, but that's not the purpose of the building. And if they're just temporarily putting something in it, I think that just to keep it used, I think that's sort of.
So then let me ratchet it up another step then. So we take that portable classroom and using that for the Director of Special Education Services. Now it's being used for an academic end. The others are not being used. So how do we handle that situation?
Well, it's being used. It's being used for a portion of what is defined in the Senate version. And why not? I mean, I can think of a building that is vacant, a vacant elementary school as we consolidated from 5 to 4. And it has adult education, which is not K through 12. It has a preschool, which is run for Title I purposes and Head Start. It's a very active building. It's a terrific use. It may not fit in the House version, but it's a terrific use by the school district. I think that's clear in the Senate version that those are academic uses, including the administrative use for the special education director or adult education director in this case. And the building is essentially 100% utilized. So it's not even, I mean, we wouldn't be measuring, is it 10% or 100%? But you get the, I'm trying to address your question.
I could take a step back. Are we all in agreement with the use used for academic purposes, extracurricular activities, administrative school functions, or sports? I think that's common with everything that is both on the House and Senate side.
I get the feeling from talking with representatives that we are supportive of that part of the definition.
So the Senate's definition.
Yeah, I think the hangup is on the 10%.
The underutilized.
Underutilized sections. If I, for example, one of the buildings I did had an older building, another older building, and we had 3 portable classrooms. If one of those portable classrooms was used for some service, wouldn't it be wonderful to be able to have a charter school come in and take advantage of the gym, of the other services in the other portions of the facilities? Now, the facility may be a whole or maybe, broken up. I think in my terms of looking at how can this really benefit alternative forms of education, such as a charter school, and offer those kids that opportunity, I think this is a wonderful opportunity if we don't lock it down so that the whole facility is not able to be used because, or it's being underutilized, but it's being used. So I think there is room for this portion which is tentatively put here, or underutilized with less than 10% of the square footage of the building, used for those purposes that we've discussed. I think it's coming down to that first part of the sentence.
It won't change
10%.
School building to school facility. That would include more than one building.
Yeah, that's where my problem is. Facility meaning, for example, Londonderry High School, the facility. It's got a separate gym off by itself. And so is that a separate facility or is that part of the facility? And I think that's somewhere the hang-up is. Here we say in this subdivision, unused facility means a school building. But could be, is that a whole facility or just one building in a facility? It's,
So are you envisioning, it's very hard dealing with hypotheticals.
I know.
So are you envisioning the idea that through demographics, with a smaller size, that Litchfield would be thinking we're going to move people out of that gymnasium and have that? I mean, it's such a specialized
No,
building.
but I think the word
I don't see it
facility.
happening.
No,
That's the
right.
thing.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the word facility and a school building, means a school building owned by a school district. And I think that's where it needs to be broadened.
I think charter schools wouldn't be interested in the gymnasium
No,
building.
I'm not.
I think charter schools would be interested in classrooms, because what they're having to do now is generally lease commercial space that has no classrooms and no kitchen facilities, no anything like that. So what I envision a charter school, when they come online, start looking for a place to go, they're not looking for the gymnasium or the temporary classrooms or the, any of that. They're looking for, where's a place that we can be for a long period of time in a functional or a facility that is built for our function, which is classrooms. So all of these extraneous, well, we have a shed over here for the track. That's not to the point, I think. I think we need to focus on the idea that, and that's why in the original bill, it spoke to direct student instruction. That was what Senator Gardner and I sat down with a piece of paper and said, what do charters want? What do they need? And instead of having a commercial facility in the middle of a mall, what should we be targeting? And that's why the direct student instruction phrase was in the original language.
But, you got to recognize that charters are charter public schools that are required to provide those types of standards, music instruction, physical education, and the kid's going to be there all day, so there's going to be some food services, media instruction, computers. Yes, I agree they need to have instructional space, but instructional space is not limited to a classroom.
And this is why we have the different versions coming through.
Yeah.
We obviously have charter schools now. We had one in the middle of a mall. I don't know what they did for physical education facilities. They don't have playgrounds. They had in a commercial setting.
The mall wasn't owned by a school district.
Yeah, for all of those reasons, these unused buildings are the logical place for a charter school to be. If they don't have kitchen facilities, they then have to arrange for delivery of food or something like that, and then that eliminates their funding, federal funding for that. So if we can figure out a way to not try to have every possibility, well, what if I have a gymnasium?
Right.
Let's focus on the goal here, and the goal is to try to make sure a kid that is now maybe in the middle of a mall has a suitable facility for learning. That's
My thing when I mentioned the gymnasium, that's because it's part of the
I
a
know.
facility. It could be anything else. It could be a separate classroom section.
could be.
Mr. Chair, can we take a break for 5 minutes?
Sure.
That'd be swell.
You guys just came back a little early. You have a minute left. But if you have some pearls of wisdom for us, we'd like to hear it.
We are on a different track. And I'm trying to make the Senate version as close to the House version as I can. So what I'm proposing is that we use the Senate version, except for the fact that I think where I'm caught is the not used for. And so if I'm saying means a school district, I don't have any problem with the academic purpose, the extracurricular, as long as those are the uses for, how do I say this? I'm trying to avoid where in the Senate version that we're not just using a building for storage of lunch trays or something like that. I'm trying to eliminate the which is not used and try to make it which is being used. And really that's the difference between the House and the Senate. The House side says what it can be used for, and the Senate side is saying what it is not being used for.
So would you be okay with something that said,
Not-
so if we're using the Senate version,
Yeah,
means a school building owned by a school district which is not used for academic purposes, extracurricular activities, administrative school functions, or sports. And somewhere in there, we define administrative school functions does not include storage.
I would.
Storage. I think that we keep getting caught up on storage.
Well, I use storage as the euphemism for anything. I just don't,
Yes.
and I'm not accusing an administrator of doing this, but it is possible to circumvent the intent of this by something else. I think in the Senate, it came up with a janitor's office or something like that. And that's the idea. If somebody is in there, does that mean it's being used and therefore doesn't qualify? But other than that, I'm okay with saying that this building is for those purposes, and if it's not being used for those purposes, then it's on the list, I guess.
So what I'm hearing is
You-
you like the Senate version?
That's what you're sounding like, right?
I mean,
Yeah,
I think the record is clear. That we're saying this, if it's solely used for storage, if somebody has a claim, if somebody is, I think I would like us to just stay with the words that we have. And if this needs to be squeezed more, the definition with a tweak, then let's do it. But let's find the evidence of what it is we're objecting to. I think unused is unused. And that's going to be clear, and I
But
don't,
underutilized is also part of.
underutilized is
Yeah,
it's
okay.
a hard term for you and me to agree.
Yep.
But we're having trouble defining unused also, so.
But I think, yeah, I think we said if it's not being used for these school functions, which are administrative, sports, co-curricular, or academic purposes.
But administrative is,
It's wide. No, I get it.
Yeah.
But
And sports is too. I mean, if you have a whole bunch of classrooms and yet they run a adult education in the gym. Do they say, okay, well, we don't have to do that because we're using the gym, you know?
And that's the way it works. You have community schools programs where
right,
in the evening hours or in the
Right,
3
but
o'clock
meanwhile,
onwards,
all
it's
of-
used.
But meanwhile, all of that classroom space doesn't get used. That's what I'm saying.
That's why you have the 10%.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's very hard. Now you've got number of clock, you've done this. Number of clock hours in a week. And what's your definition of a clock hour or school hour?
How about if we
And
take
what's
10%?
10%?
And we change the date back to the 21st.
So, if you take the Senate version, you change the date back to this July, the bill might not even be signed.
It will. I'm on the enrolled bill.
The date was important so that the definition can get out there, schools can develop the plans. That was.
Yeah, and
I
that's,
understand, but there's, we should, in the school building authority, we're developing that plan of doing the statewide evaluations of all of the buildings. Superintendent should know right now by as simple a definition as what you have in the Senate side. They should know in 10 minutes which buildings.
So
you're
you
talking
want it
about.
to take effect, but the first reporting date would be, isn't that what we did?
No, well, you put it for July 2022.
For the first reporting date.
Well, I would say July 21, that this July, they should be able to, in 2 minutes, say, well, we have 5 buildings.
I think
Says that they
prompted
need to
for
have
that.
an academic plan for the next 2 years. I feel-
No, because there's also the caveat that they can remove any building for that first year or
Oh, we took that
any one
out.
time. So if they don't have the written, they're able to just say, we're not going to put it on.
Senate.
Right.
So you,
Oh, you moved
yeah,
that?
so
Yeah.
Well, we'll put
So-
that one sentence, that you're able to.
So use the House version, Roman 2.
And the Senate Roman 1.
to
Oh, yeah, there it is. Yeah.
and the
to
rest
find the
is-
compromise here,
And
seeing that on July 1, 2021. Now, how is that going to get done by that date? When this thing gets signed, perhaps in July. Now, what it ought to say on January 1, 2022 and July 1 of every year thereafter.
Well, that's the Senate version.
No, I said on January 1, that
Oh,
slips
oh,
it
oh,
out a
January,
little closer.
Hmm.
And July 1 of
Okay.
every year thereafter.
Okay. Or even September 1, I don't care.
I think January 1, 2022 and
That gives them
July
6
1
months.
every,
Okay.
That gives time to put something together.
Okay.
With that, then
Nothing is
I
not
am
reasonable.
agreeable
Yeah.
to,
And we're,
And I'm lost to read.
so we're sticking with the Senate version Roman 2, but changing the date to January 1, 2022, and taking the last sentence from the House version and moving that over to the Senate version.
Yes,
Thank you. See you later today.
yes. Thanks for your help.
okay, now, no, I don't think we discussed that latter
Just the
part.
date.
Okay, just the date.
Just the
Just
date.
We don't need the last one.
So we're just changing July 1 to January 1, and then 2000, leaving the 2022 as it is.
Right. And
Okay, representatives on the House side, let's take a vote. Representative Hill,
Aye.
I,
Boone,
Yes.
Cordelli, myself, yes.
Yes.
Yes, and Senator Conjo said.
He said
fine
yes
with
too,
it.
I heard him.
Yes.
Yes. So we're good. All we have to do is get that
that
date
amendment,
changed.
right,
So here's my other question. We got an instruction the other day that said these can go on consent calendar. Well, it seems to me, committee of conference, we all agree
We will
anyway. So
never-
what the hell is this consent calendar?
I don't know.
I don't know.
That's a House deal. I don't think
I'm
they're
not,
interested.
I don't
I don't
understand that at all, but,
I was just, well, it has to be a unanimous decision, that's all.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
us.
Yeah, you all got to sign off. That's the big deal.
and you have to report.
And I have to do a report on these two bills today.
Right.
And I assume that on 242. And we have an amendment in front of us. It's 2008H. And I'm looking at that amendment right now and comparing it to what I have here on the amendment for Senate Bill 148. The language on Roman 3 here, Roman 6, and Roman 7 is identical to the language that we had that we are proposing for 148. So we're on the same page there. And then it looks like this, when we're talking about fiscal capacity disparity aid, it's as we talked about in committee. Everything else is the same. For those who might want it, I gave this sheet to Senator Ward that just a few moments ago. There's a couple more. Yes, this sheet is just for your information. It came from the Coal Regions Lab out of Hanover. And you can look at the satellite image of the North Pole back in 1980 and look at it in 2012. You see we've lost well over half the ice on the North Pole in just that short time frame. And that's what causes these physical, biological, socioeconomic, and geopolitical challenges that we're encountering here with our environment.
That's 2012.
Pardon me?
That's 2012.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know it. And that's why, we talked earlier in break, how the challenges for those minerals up there in the North Pole area in Greenland, et cetera, are being now challenged by places like China and Russia. Our kids are going to see a different world. So is there any objection to 2008H?
I have none.
It's exactly as we discussed.
Yep.
I have none.
Senator
Thank you for
Prentice?
this handout.
Okay.
Somebody has to handle it?
I said, thank you for the handout.
Oh, sure.
Yes.
Hearing. Okay, so we'll take a vote from the representative side, starting with Representative Shaw,
Yes.
Representative Hobson,
Yes.
Representative Cordelli,
Yes.
Representative Ladd, yes.
Senator Prentice,
Yes.
Senator Hennessy,
Yes.
and Senator Wood, yes.
Thank you very much. It looks like we have HB 242 done.
That's right. Good work.
Thank you.
Chairman, could I confirm that this is an amendment to the Senate version, which includes that 4C language, or the House version, which does not?
What are you talking about now? This amendment right here goes into 242. We will have to act upon this language when we discuss 148 later.
I'm saying,
You're not-
which version of 242 were you
With
in?
the Senate.
Thank you.
Yes,
Just confirming that.
yes, yes. Anything further? Looks like we're really done now.
Really exciting. Thank
Good.
you.
Thank you very much, everybody.